Hello. Today's video, we're going to talk about universal data elements, otherwise known as UDEs. So part of the assessment form includes the UDEs, so the universal data element. The rest of the information on the assessment form will be covered in other videos, such as income, disabilities, non-cash benefits, and medical insurance. So after creating a client record, adding a household, you may have already filled in some of these universal data elements, such as date of birth type, primary race, secondary race, if that's applicable. Some people don't identify as a secondary race. If a person does not, please make sure you leave this as select. And ethnicity. Some of these questions were already covered in a previous video. Important to note with date of birth, to fill out the date of birth type, data quality element with it as well. For race, there's a variety of selections that have been chosen by HUD. There's also options for client doesn't know, client refused, and data not collected. However, we strongly encourage people not to use these. Secondary race have the same options, but like I said before, if a person does not identify as a secondary race, just leave it as select. Ethnicity is either Hispanic or non-Hispanic, or Latino or non-Latino. Then you also have the client refused, client doesn't know, and data not collected. Gender is a little bit different of a category. You have options for female, male, a gender other than singularly female or male, which is non-binary, gender fluid, agender, culturally specific gender. There's a transgender option, a questioning option. If a person's gender is not what is selected in the box above, you can hit clear all. If you clear all, then you can choose a different gender if the person identifies as a different gender than is in the history. If you highlight any of the genders up that are identified up top, you can see that the client doesn't know, client refused, data not collected, data elements will gray out because you can't choose one of those after you choose an identified gender. If you choose a client refused or data not collected, all of the genders options will also gray out. If you make a mistake, you can always click the clear all. You also can select multiple genders. And the way that you do that is you'll highlight the first identified gender identity, then you'll hit the control button, which is CTRL on your keyboard. And then you're going to select the second option or even the third. A person can identify as many genders as they feel that they are. So this is really a client choice. And then once you have the gender selected, you can move on. Relationship to head of household is also a universal data element. This must be answered for all participants within the household. So you have to select at least one person as the head of household. And then any other person in the household, you would choose a different relationship to them. The next primary universal data element we're going to talk about, two of them are only answered for the head of household only. So if you have a person who's identified the head of household, they are the individual that you will put the housing move-in date data element in for. So if you're a permanent supportive housing project, the housing move-in date will go into the entry of the head of household only. And the client location. Client location has to do with your COC code. So if you are Oswego, Onondaga, or Cayuga counties, that's New York 505. If it's a Tompkins County project, it will be New York 510. The next set of universal data elements we're going to talk about have to do with the prior living situation. So this may change for a variety of different project types based upon what you answer this question to be. Emergency shelter and transitional housing and street outreach projects will only have the option to fill this out, and the next questions will not change. It'll be the homeless status questions. So prior living situation for rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing and service only providers, as well as prevention. If you choose a homeless situation, you will have a variety of questions that pop up that ask about homeless status to determine chronicity of this homeless individual or family. So the length of stay. So this question for prior living situation is, where did they sleep the night before they entered your project? So place not meant for human habitation. If you select a homeless situation, you will have to say how long they were in that homeless situation for. The approximate date homelessness started. We talk about this data element a lot. When it asks about homelessness specifically, this is under the HUD homeless definition, which is covered in a previous video. So asking a person if they were in a homeless situation, how long were they there, and then making an approximate guess and when their homelessness started. This does not include doubled up situations, couch surfing, or any other transitional housing situation. Regardless of where they stayed last night, the number of times a client has been homeless, meaning living on the streets in an emergency shelter, safe haven in the past 3 years, including today. So if a person is in a homeless situation today, that would add a time to that. So the number of times. So depending on any data elements entered previously, you might add 1 to it, or you can just simply ask the client based upon these questions being answered under the HUD homeless definition. And then the total number of months people are living on the streets or in an emergency shelter or safe haven in the past 3 years. So how many months? If a person has been in a homeless shelter for at least 1 overnight stay in a shelter, that equals 1 month. You can use HMIS data that has been entered previously to help determine this if a client is unsure how to answer this question. So use the tools and information within the system in order to help the person answer these questions. And so you would answer the number of months. The next data element has to do with DV, victim or survivor. So was this person, or is this person, a victim or survivor of domestic violence? If you answer no, you do not have to answer the next 2 questions. However, if you answer yes for this individual, you do have to answer these next 2 questions. The first question asks, if yes for domestic violence victim survivor, when experience occurred? So when did the last experience of domestic violence occur? You will answer this question. And then if yes for domestic violence victim or survivor, are they currently fleeing? So are they currently fleeing a domestic violence situation, yes or no? So that covers the universal data elements for the HMIS entry assessment. So thank you for today.